Prologue, 20 years ago in the Empire of Castamia. The night that the Phantom brought a sealed parchment from the mountain of Casa de Mor to Emperor Mosher of Castamia, a gale swept the city. Wind shook shutters off window frames so violently that the panes sailed about the cobblestone roadways as if they had burst from the clouds. Merchant signs clamored against lampposts, and whatever items had rested near a person's porch were now hazardous projectiles thundering through the streets. A man would have been a fool to step outside, for gusts of angry mist rumbled down the narrow alleys looking for flesh to devour. Skura, their naked black wings walloping against the storm, spun through the back streets, bouncing off walls as they hunted for prey. The alarm had sounded, shrill whistles blown by brave sentries risking their lives on rooftops, warning citizens to hide behind the stone walls of their flats. Panic-stricken men hurried their wives and children into homes, sealing shut oak doors with iron bolts fastened tight. Grooms and stable boys rushed unnerved livestock into sheds before they themselves took shelter, narrowly slipping out of the bloodthirsty claws of Skotati's beasts. Hungry appetites of the Skura devoured those who weren't quick enough to escape. "Quickly, Gessner, take the child upstairs, lock your door, and keep your chambermaids with you," Mosher instructed his wife. He kissed the newborn babe on his forehead. They had christened him that morning, Barty, son of Mosher. Somehow his father's thaumaturge heard he and his wife had a boy-child. Mosher feared for the young one, as the curse he suffered could be transmitted to the babe. Their only hope would be to hide the child. Gessner swaddled the baby, hurried to her servants, and the assembly left, closing the hall ingress as they departed. The Emperor watched the atrocities outside from the window in his dimly lit throne room. His heart sickened. His galloping pulse resonated a near-fatal march in his chest. Before the young green-clad page opened the door to the grand hall and stepped inside. Before the ghostly appearance of Skotati's messenger entered behind him, swirling about his ebon cloak as though the fabric itself provided flight. Emperor Mosher knew settlement for his debt had come. "Vassal, a message from Casa de Mor." As soon as he made the announcement, the Phantom emerged, cloaked in black. Flinging a streak of light from his fingertips that bolted at the page, the boy fell. Whether he fainted, or by death, the Emperor could not tell. Neither did he step forward to find out, as the demon's lightning barred Mosher from moving. "What is this?" Mosher asked, his voice trembling. He kept one eye on his page, who lay motionless on the cold marble floor. What a pity! The lad had been a favorite of his. The demon said not a word, but set the letter on the ground, and with a heated breath blew the secret missive at him. The letter adhered to the Emperor's robe, and he clasped it tightly, never once taking his eyes from the Phantom. The man, or spirit, or demon, or whatever one might call it, for Mosher could not be sure if any human blood ran in its veins, turned to the door, spat once at the threshold, and vanished. The throne-room door remained ajar, and Mosher hurried to his page. He stopped short, sickened at the sight. The boy had fallen on his back. A cut scarred his face, blackened as if a burning saber had sliced his cheek from one side to another. His pale blue eyes fixed in a deathly stare, the whites of which had drowned in a pool of red. His expertly tailored doublet fell open, charred and singed. Servants rushed into the room, having seen the terror make its way out of the castle. The chambermaid wept as valets lifted the poor young soul and carried him away. Mosher turned his back to them, holding back bile. He stared at the letter in his trembling hands and slowly broke the seal that had been smeared with blood. Whose blood? He could only wonder. "Ride to me, to the caves of Demonte. You owe me, or your son dies. Skotati." Mosher inhaled deeply. So, this is what it had come to. After conquering all the land and peoples east of the mountains with his father, an empire larger than any other, a prize no man had ever achieved before, he must now surrender to a greater and more deadly force. Why did he think he could escape the Phantom's jealousies? Skotati's puppet beast had hunkered on Casa d'Amor, watching and waiting. The Emperor wondered just what the thaumaturge was waiting for. Now he knew. Skotati's been waiting for him to finish collecting the spoils. A terrible screech sounded in the streets, coupled with a flash of lightning and a burning roof. Flames outside illuminated his chambers. His eyes burned at the sight of the demon's fire, as if Skotati's curse had seared his soul from inside out. "Vassal!" A valet entered and bowed, shaken. "Fire!" "Yes, send men to put it out." "The wind?" the young man asked. "It will die. Saddle a horse for me. Quickly, now!" Before the servant turned to leave, his eyes widened and his mouth fell open. "What are you gawking at? Do as I say!" "Your eyes, vassal. They are aflame." "Leave!" Mosher ordered, and the servant fled. Mosher threw the note in the fire and watched it curl. The edges blackened and the parchment trembled, Skotati's name vivid as the flame devoured the Phantom's request. When bits of ash danced up the chimney, he spat on the coals. He had no choice but to go, bound as if Skotati had chained his ankles to the mountain. Burning straw, wet and smoldering, filled his nostrils with the stink of ruin when he left the castle. The blaze spread quickly with a furious wind. 2 roofs were alight. Smoke from the sweltering thatching drew upward and coagulated into a cloud sealing out the night. Men and women formed a line with the soldiers, passing buckets one to the other, dripping into the village well, a chain of workers sweating, panic-stricken, dousing the fire. But the Castamians didn't battle the fire alone. These simpletons were not familiar with their enemy. Mosher kept the secret in his heart, for he struck a rod against the anvil. He, the Emperor, had already sealed their fate. Whatever peace they worked for, he had bartered away, and from that transaction came human sacrifice. The blood lay on Castamian hands. His groom waited with his horse as soon as he stepped into the courtyard. No one asked his destination. They shouldn't want to know. He'd ridden to Casa d'Amor and the caves of Diamante during a storm before. No doubt he will ride there again. He knew one thing for sure, though. Skotati's demands tonight would generate the same penalties his grandfather had faced and would someday task his son. The curse would haunt the Castamian Empire for generations.